Hello friends, welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. Now, we've done it with the relegation battle, video available. We've done it with the top 4 race, video available. It's now time to do it for the Premier League title race. Liverpool and Man City both look absolutely astounding right now. Such good teams. But there can only be one winner. So in this video, what I've tried to do is something a little bit different. And with the help of Ali, Tacticality, link is in the description. Go check him out. Go check his podcast out. There's also a link to that. And my boy Kai, link to him is for his Twitter account is in the description as well. Guy's an absolute beautiful man. Thank you to both of them for helping me out. We've had a look back over the last year or so at both teams and focused on the weaknesses. And because between now and the end of the season, of course, there is an array of fixtures to be played, 9 games at the moment, at the time of recording, but only one of them can do it. And it's more about dropping points and how they drop points. So I wanted to have a look at both teams and see what their weaknesses were. Now, these are dubious weaknesses, so you're going to have to stick with me. But I will also give my prediction on who I believe, due to the kind of formulas that we're putting in place and the teams that they've still got to play who could exploit the weaknesses that we found. I'm going to put forward the team that I think, now with 9 games to go, is going to win the Premier League this season. Before we get into the video, if you are new to the channel and by the end of it you've enjoyed yourself, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. We will also be having a look and kind of trying to visualize some of the weaknesses that we're talking about in a few gorgeous screenshots. Right, let's get into this, starting off with Man City and their weaknesses. Now, with the ball, without the ball, are two big different things for games against Man City, because you're not going to have the ball a lot of the time. And first of all, with the ball, you're going to want to try and hurt the opposition. So how do you do that? I would suggest that it is behind the fullbacks. Now, generally, when we're talking about this, I think the blueprint that you're seeing for the teams that are getting points against Man City at this moment in time is to focus on Cancelo. Focus on Cancelo because they play an elbow defence. We've got a video on the channel actually talking about the elbow tactic, and it's something that they do massively, and it's something that Cancelo likes to focus on specifically as that guy playing further forward. So if you talk about the Crystal Palace game, which was a draw recently, let's have a look at the side that they focus on. They focused on the right-hand side, 42% in this game. And in particular, if you have a look at the average positions for Crystal Palace, and you see where Cancelo is pretty high up. Kyle Walker looks to do the same, but is a bit more of a safety blanket, I guess, for this Man City side. But Crystal Palace, you had 2 players there, Gallagher and Elise, looking to take up advanced positions on that right-hand side. This was to take advantage of João Cancelo's high positioning, and Man City have a high line themselves, as do Liverpool. We'll get into that. But that was the way that they were trying to target. Now, Crystal Palace didn't do brilliantly with that in terms of scoring goals, but that was the area that they were looking at. If we have a look at another game that they dropped points in, the Man City versus Tottenham game, and it doesn't look like it's too much over on that right-hand side. But if you think about Tottenham, you think about Son on that left-hand side. Normally, it's a lot more swayed to that left-hand side. But in this game, there was a desire to occupy Cancelo and also work down that right-hand side with Kulusevski and Emerson, who had a really important role in this game. So in terms of taking advantage of Cancelo's positioning and him and just getting round him, we'll show you a few goals in just a second. But in that Spurs game in particular, Emerson Royal, you can see from his heat map here, these 2 areas here. First of all, this is where Cancelo, of course, is playing. So he's looking to kind of get there and stop him. But also, if you think of Kulusevski's position within him, there was a desire to try and get the ball in behind the fullback. Kulusevski received the ball or progressive passes 4 times. The only player who received more was Son with 6, who of course we know is here and making those diagonal runs. At the end of it all, that's his main aim, is to receive progressive passes. So I think that said a lot. And Emerson's role as this sort of right wing back was really important. In this match, he carried the ball a total of 123 progressive yards. He was the only player to reach triple digits. What this says to me is that they have to play with a counter-attacking spirit. And if you think of the first goal, actually comes from the other side, playing the ball to Kane and isolating them as onto a 3v3 going forward. But with Emerson's role, the point is to suck in Cancelo and then play the ball around him using his dribbling and his ability to drive with the ball. Let's talk about that goal then. So here you can see the elbow back 4. This is Kyle Walker here. He's getting at Sessegnon because they like to press, of course. You've got players pressing all around the pitch. And on this occasion, you've got Cancelo on this left-hand side, focusing on the helping out and stopping Kulusevski. Now, in terms of breaking lines, this is the first point of call. if you've got the ball, you've got to move the ball quickly, and you've got to utilise the fact that you can get 3v2, and also the high line of Man City. A lot of talk about Liverpool's high line, but what about Man City's? Because if we move this on one more, what you can see is that creation of space, working first and foremost, again, in these fullback areas, taking someone like Kyle Walker out of the game. Kane's able to pick up the ball here. You're able to break some lines. You're taking out 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the game. If I just clean it up for a second. And there's 2 decisions here, which is interesting, actually, if we look at another screenshot in just a second. With Kane, the difference is that Laporte comes with him. And because Laporte comes with him, Diaz then looks to play offside, but Kane's been able to play that ball first time, and of course you've got the acres of space. And that's the big thing. When you're up against Man City, if you want to get yourself a goal, you've got to try and move the ball quickly to create those 3-on-3s. So you have to have players with energy, but you have to move the ball quickly. Another great example, this is on the right-hand side. Cancelo's playing on the right-hand side in this game, but the game against Manchester United, where they won 2-0. Henderson plays a throw to Luke Shaw, who's got the space out here. Cancelo is part of a 3 at that moment in time. Okay, you've got one player on his way back. But Cancelo then makes a decision to go and press. And again, this is sometimes something you can look to exploit, because if you're able to press, like he does, but work around him, the important thing here is Rashford. Rashford stays wide. Rashford works in this space to try and dislodge the back 3 and create a 3-on-3, as we were discussing. Luke Shaw and Rashford do brilliantly here, and they work around him, but because Cancelo goes to engage with Luke Shaw, and you've got someone who's able to dribble with the ball, a bit like Emerson we were talking about in the Spurs game, you're able to get past him, and then all of a sudden you have yourselves working down the pitch with a 3-on-3. There's a bit of chaos. You've got to have a centre-back that comes out, and that's where you can utilise the space that's there. And of course, the huge game for Man City and Liverpool is going to be against each other, and that could be another problem for them. If you think of how free-flowing they are in terms of beating a press, Liverpool are so strong. And again, we talk about that elbow defence, Cancelo that little bit higher up and also willing to engage. You've also got a very high line here with Man City. And the other thing to remember is that often they don't play the high line, or not to the same cutthroat nature as Liverpool. So at times they drop off, and there's 2 ways of looking at that. You give yourself time, but you also give the opposition time. So if they are able to cut through you, that gives you a really good opportunity, especially if you can take out that fullback and make it 3-on-3. And that's what happens in this game in the goal against Liverpool. Salah's able to take Cancelo out of the game. You've got your back 3, and then once he's been able to get through him, as we move it on one more, all of a sudden you're on a 3 versus 3. And because they move back and don't play that high line, you've got all these players out of the game, and it is 3v3. And that's a dangerous position for them to be in. That said, Man City are ridiculous. They concede 18 goals so far, I think it is, in 28 games. So they're very, very good side. These are key moments and very fleeting moments because of the dominance of Man City, but they are still moments. And so if there are some teams that can exploit that, then maybe that gives you a chance. The other player you've got to think about, and this is when you haven't got the ball, is Rodri. Stopping Rodri is so important. Why is it so important? It's so important not because he can pick out a pass, but because the focus needs to be the others. He's also a player who doesn't want to dribble with the ball, doesn't like to bring out the ball really. So the importance is your positioning as a midfield and as a back line. And the teams that have done well against Man City have been the teams that have been able to alienate the false 9. The home game against Spurs, Bernardo Silva played in the false 9. His normal average touches is 66. It was 48 touches in this game. Now that's a bit skewed because he normally plays a bit deeper, but as you go into the other games, it happens again. That player, that false 9, keeps getting isolated. In the Spurs game, Ferran Torres, he normally has over 30 touches per match when he was playing for Man City in that central role, 25 touches during that game. In the Palace home game, Foden had 55 touches, which is just under his average, which is 57. But the bottom line is that Rodri, playing as a 6, him not being allowed to have the ball, but just to play sideways and backwards, is the tactic that you need to use. And in the recent game against Palace, Foden once again was massively isolated. He had 25 touches versus Palace. The next lowest when it comes to outfield players was Grealish with 46 touches. He didn't dribble the ball into the box once. City tried to find him 30 times. He was only able to receive the ball 20 times. He had the lowest pass receive success rate of any player in the Man City side, 67%. The next lowest being 82% for Mahrez. And for a team that dominates possession, that is quite surprising. So as we look at the Man City upcoming fixtures, what are we looking for? We need a team that can exploit Man City's left-hand side using pace, be able to double up on City in key areas. Emerson and Kulusevski, for example, Gallagher and Lise in that Palace game, able to negate the false nine and can utilise the space behind the centre-backs. Another thing that Kai was able to find from his research was the fact that Man City have dropped points 5 times this season after playing in a cup competition in the week. Of course, they've got the Champions League. You've also got that postponed fixture against Wolves because of the FA Cup semi-final. And if you think in the recent match versus Palace, that's a good example. They failed to score versus Palace at home when after playing West Ham in the League Cup 3 days before. Man City also failed to score against Southampton after playing in the Champions League against RB Leipzig in the week. Champions League run could seriously hinder their hopes when you're trying to break down that team and you just might not have that zip in your mind. So in terms of those next matches and the things that we're looking for and trying to stop them, Burnley, that should be a game that they can navigate regardless. But there's a few here. Of course, the Liverpool game is going to be so huge. And I've shown you there that they are able to exploit it. But of course, Man City are a strong side in their own right as well. But the other games that there's an option that they could hurt them. You've got Wolves away at some stage. Wolves have in the past shown that ability to beat Man City, a slight bogey team for Man City. Watford should be fine. Leeds should be fine, really. Just, you got Bamford out for so long. Probably a lack of attacking options overall, although they have hurt them in the past, even with 10 men as well. Brighton, you've got Lamptey, who has the skill set to hurt the opposition and hurt Cancelo in terms of taking him out the game and then allowing those other runners like Trossard, McAllister, attacking midfielders to get involved in the game. Newcastle, Aaron Maximin, to have that ball progression, but also someone like Chris Wood who can allow you to bypass the press. That could be a dangerous game for Man City. Again, all of these have the massive caveat of Man City not pumping 5 goals down the other end. West Ham, will Jarrod Bowen be back on that right-hand side? That would be very useful up against Cancelo as well. I'm not sure what the latest is with his injury. Let me know in the comments below. And Aston Villa, you've got that narrow system which might make life difficult for Rodri, and maybe Watkins could play on that right-hand side as opposed to working that left channel as much to, again, try and get behind Cancelo. But those games overall to me feel like it's going to be unlikely for them to drop points. But it's the Newcastle game, it's the Wolves game, and for me, I think it's the Brighton game as well, where they might just come unstuck. On to Liverpool then, and they've only lost twice this season. Again, an amazing achievement, what they've done this season. The levels have just been ridiculous, and the amount of goals, of course, that they're scoring. They've got a goal difference that's 5 better than Man City's right now. I mean, that's just unheard of, let's be honest. But the 2 games that they lost, losing to Leicester City 1-0, on the 28th of December and losing 3-2 to West Ham. There was a very clear focus. And the clear focus was to focus on the right-hand side of Liverpool or attack down the left-hand side. And this is because of Trent. And when we're talking about this being about Trent, it's because Trent is this fantastic world-class player. But in terms of the positions that he occupies going forward, bit like Cancelo, who again everyone waxes lyrical about, rightly so, it's higher up the pitch and it's a lot more narrow. Liverpool like to defend in a very sort of compact way, and it puts pressure on the 2 centre-backs. Now, the great thing about this is that you've got someone like Matip on that right-hand side a lot of the time, who's a wonderful sweeper. But if you are going to hurt Liverpool, and again, these are all huge caveats because it's so hard to beat Liverpool. It's so hard to beat Man City. These 2 sides in Leicester and West Ham had a very, very clear blueprint. As you can see, in both games, the focus was down the left-hand side. 57% for Leicester City in that game, 53% for West Ham in that game. And if we have a look at the average positions, there again was that focus to be down that left-hand side. Leicester City, they had Iheanacho and Vardy up top. And when it comes to Iheanacho, out on that left-hand side, looking to stretch the play. And also Vardy, of course, is going to make those runs through the channels, but keep those 2 centre-backs kind of pinned in a little bit or honest, or ultimately, if they are going to go across, they better go and win it, because if they don't, of course, it's going to be a 2-on-2. West Ham, similar thing. Ben Rami on that left-hand side, but again, Antonio as that figure who can get on the ball, but also happy to stretch the play, stretch and make life difficult for a Liverpool side that plays a very, very high line and retains that high line, plays that offside trap. And what's great about the offside trap, probably my favourite thing about it, is the fact that what they've done in terms of a weakness of not having your 4 and your 2 fullbacks to cover. The good thing is there is a synergy when it comes to that offside trap, because it is just 2 people. The offside trap is 2 people. It's the 2 centre-backs. And if they both step up together, which those 2 should do, it takes out 2 other players out of the equation in terms of having that strong offside line. By being advanced, and when you've got someone like Trent here, who's high and narrow, he's essentially playing as a midfielder, when you're able to get that ball over to him, if you're able to get the ball to his feet, you've got players who are happy to get their head up and drive in. That's the difference. You know, if he's just going here and trying to get his cross in, so be it. But what's great, or possibly great, from an attacking sense, is you can make it then a 2-on-2. We were talking about a 3-on-3 when it comes to Man City. If you've got a player here, and of course that's centre forward as well, it does become a 2-on-2 quickly. But because Liverpool are so brilliant, because Man City are so brilliant, you've got to do this quickly, fluently, and you've got to have players in the right position ready to drive at the heart of this Liverpool defence and try and take on the likes of Matip and Van Dijk. And again, that's difficult because these 2 are so good one-on-one. You've also got to be really aggressive on the right-hand side of Liverpool defensively. I think you saw that with Man City when we were talking about that as well. And there are a lot of similarities with these 2 teams. That Leicester City game that we were talking about, Dewsbury Hall made 5 tackles and interceptions, whilst Luke Thomas made 7. So as much as you're not going to have the ball all the time, you've got to win your duels. That's going to be the big thing. But you've got to focus on that right-hand side. When it comes to West Ham against Liverpool when they won their game, again, there was this focus on stopping this right-hand side, and Declan Rice was absolutely instrumental in that game. So important. 8 tackles and interceptions, the most of any player. And there was that focus that be aggressive here, go and win those duels, and someone like Declan Rice can offer that for you. And once you do that, you're able to take out a lot of players out of the game, get the ball to your players who can dribble, and then you can start to hurt the opposition quickly. Another option to talk about just quickly, and this was in a defeat for Crystal Palace, but if you remember the game Crystal Palace against Liverpool, they had a real go at them, and it could have been very, very different. It's quite a controversial game. And I wanted just to focus on, once again, those 2 centre-backs, actually. As much as it is about those full-backs, the way that they've decided to play is the fact that your full-backs will be on their way back a lot of the time, and so it will be 2-on-2. And one other way of hurting them, and this is something that Palace did quite well, and I guess it means that Vieira deserves a lot of credit, is he played, well, what he doesn't do normally is play Mateta and Edouard in the same team. But in this game, they did that. They played those 2, and by playing those 2, you've got them one-on-one, and that's a good way of dislodging the opposition. By doing that, you've got 2-on-2, which we've been talking about a couple of times. If you can do that and move that quickly, that does give you an opportunity to hurt the opposition, which it did so. You get them going through 2-on-1 if you're able to bypass those 2 players with a little bit of quality, which can happen in a split second. And again, it's about taking out all of those other players quite quickly. Another one where we're talking about Trent and the space that he gets into as well. It's again about dislodging those 2 centre-backs. This is a game where everyone looks fine here. You look pretty settled. And look, if he wants to play that pass, then fine. But because of the nature of how Liverpool like to play, Trent goes to him and it dislodges one of those 2 centre-backs. And if you've got those runners, it's going to give you a chance. This was a great spot by Ali. He spotted this one where Trent's come out and got there. This is a game where they drew earlier in the season. And if we can move it along, what happened then? You're able to take players out of the game because Cucurella was able to move it around it. A bit similar to the Cancelo weakness that we were talking about. And then if you've got good bodies up top, you've taken out Konaté out of the game. And you've got 3-on-2 all of a sudden. Those overloads are available, but you just got to be aggressive defensively and you've got to move the ball quickly going forward. So with the fixtures that Liverpool have got left, who can exploit these areas? So, games still to come. I think we thought Arsenal might do it, and they had moments. And if we talk about Martinelli and the few moments of joy that he got on that left-hand side, that's a great example of it. Man United next up. Sancho on that left versus Trent. could be successful. Not many teams are able to be successful. And again, we're picking holes. Watford, expect a victory there, especially at home. Man City, of course, huge game for them. And again, they've got the Champions League games as well. Everton as a Merseyside derby is pretty difficult, but the way they're playing at the moment, you should be fine. Newcastle, an interesting one. If you're focusing on destroying the ability down that left-hand side, the right-hand side for Liverpool, alongside Alan St-Maximin's pace, you've got Willock, who can make those runs as well to help support when they look to try and concentrate on the opposition. Might be a tough one for Chris Wood, but I don't know what the status is with Wilson right now. Maybe he might be back. Could be a bit of a perfect storm against them. But again, can they not concede in these games? The Tottenham game will be after the Champions League game, if I'm right. And that will be really important. Spurs are a team that have hurt them a little bit in the past, could hurt them again with that similar idea. Someone like Heung-min Son hurting them down that left-hand side, getting him high up the pitch, getting him the ball, maybe bypassing Kane a little bit and getting him in that space to drag away Matip or whoever is playing centre-back at that moment in time. And then into May, Southampton playing as narrow as they do shouldn't really hurt Liverpool, if we're honest. It should be a perfect one for them in terms of being able to stop them. And then Wolves, Podence, Neto could be deployed on that left-hand side to hurt the space that Trent leaves when he goes forward. Again, I've said it a few times. This is obviously down to very fine margins and a lot of luck. You know, Man City draw that game despite utter dominance against Crystal Palace. And any game that Liverpool play, they will dominate as well. But this is football, and it's going to be one or two chances of dropping points. And when I look at the fixtures, the harder fixtures are actually Liverpool's. And despite the momentum that they've got right now, I think the games are so tough. And when we look at actually even that Aston Villa game on the run, I would say that Aston Villa game could be a tricky one when we look at the way that Crystal Palace had two up front. If you play Ings and Watkins up top, you might be able to have those moments. But ultimately, you've got to be able to defend well as well. So it's going to be very difficult. I don't think there'll be many points dropped because these two teams are both elite in their ability, but elite in their mentality. Massively so. It is the toss of a coin. I'm really struggling with this. I'm just... I'm going to go for Man City. And the reason I'm going to go for Man City is I've gone for them from the start. And also when I look at those fixtures for Liverpool, I just think there's still a few too many tricky ones for them to get maximum points. And I might be completely wrong. And it's going to be so fine. It's going to be so tight. And I would not be surprised whatsoever if Man City play a couple of games in Europe and then come back and can't break a team down. And Liverpool, utilise that energy, win their games and go and win the whole thing. But if I had to put money on it this second, I'd just about stick with Man City because of the fixtures that are left. I think they will have a little bit too much for all of these teams. But what do you think, guys? What do you think? It's so tough to call. So tough to call. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to stick with Man City. That's going to be my pick. Only just, though. And to be honest, I'd quite like Liverpool to win it just because I think if Man City keep winning it again and again, it's just a bit... yeah, innit? So I'd like Liverpool to win it. I think Man City will win it, but only just. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what you think about these weaknesses that both teams have, and I use that term loosely. If you've got something from the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Check out the guys in the link below. They're absolute heroes, and I'll see you in the next one.